All right, excellent. Hello world. Other team is back at it for the winter quiz. All right, we're going to break this up into a two-parter. This week, this session, we're going to do the reveals and talk about the process some. And then next week, we're going to actually take the ones that were more challenging, and we'll review those in that whole session. I think there's enough going on here that's worthy of a two-parter. Okay, introductions, and we'll get started. I am Nai Coach.
I am Shiny Shailene.
I'm Najee Mitchell.
Najee Ben.
And this is Najee Glenn.
Excellent. All right, so let's actually talk about the process. I think we're already starting to do that, so let's pick up. I know, Mitchell, you got something to say. Why don't you go ahead and get us started?
I was just saying, like, because, you know, one of the things we were concerned about that I know we're thinking about in the future is, like, how long we're going to take for the quiz. And we had a really long time for this one. We had, like, months. I did most of it last minute because I'm a really busy person and I'm a procrastinator, and that's not good. But I would have liked to have started a little earlier, but I was able to get through all of the samples, all 50 samples in, like, a week. Like, you can do that. So...
All right, so question. I'm going to ask a few follow-up questions here, and whatever you say is cool. This is just great data because we are discovering the phenomenon, and we're also inventing the process to best do that as we go along, to best track it and prove it. Okay, so did you look at the samples at all prior?
I looked at a few of them because I requested some of them, so obviously some of them I already had opinions about, and there were a few other ones that interested me, so I glanced at a few of them, but not all of them.
Okay. But so today for you, however well you do will be interesting from the point of view of you did 50 samples in a week. So yeah. that'll be interesting. So kind of take.
Yeah, I would recommend. I will say taking more time than that. I think that was a little quick, but I don't think you need 2 months either. I think you can do this in a few weeks.
Yeah, it seems like if it's 50, because like
so
a lot of times,
month, right?
A lot of times we do. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was done. I was just curious. I was asking, like, what's the future thing going to be? Like a month? That was your plan?
Well, that's actually one thing I want to kind of sort of flesh out here.
Right. I wanted to make a comment.
What I'm looking for is the following. I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4 periods. They get shorter. Okay, so the first is I want everyone to really make it a practice to at least scroll through and visually identify everyone as soon as they come out.
Yeah, because then you're just like processing them like in your head and stuff.
Because then they're actually there and it becomes interesting to you. Okay, so then I think there needs to be a period of time to do the reading. Then there needs to be a waiting period before you give them a polish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I was missing. I think.
And then a waiting period much shorter before you do a last glance over before handing in. That can be done like the day before or the day of.
Yeah, I would have liked to do that. I just didn't really get to. I was literally doing it last minute up to the day they read. So that'll just they're kind of raw. But
those 4 things I've named, would it be good then for it to be like a month?
I think a month sounds fine to me.
I'd like to just.
Please jump in.
Yes, I have a quick comment I wanted to make a little earlier. But essentially, the way we've been doing it before this was we had essentially 10 samples per week, 5 to 10 samples per week. So we could follow a similar model of 5 to 10 samples per week, just extended over a longer period of time. So you, if we did 50 samples, if it was 10 samples a week, that would take 1 month and 1 week. So,
right, I see what you're saying, Ben, but I don't want to go to the Xi quite yet. I want to stay a little more in the Ni just temporarily because I don't actually know if the 5 and 10 a week was a sweet spot.
Right.
Right. What I'm saying is that principle aligns with the.
Say again.
What I'm saying is that principle aligns with the direction to want to narrow it down to like a month. So that principle aligns with what
right.
we idea to.
It does. I just want to make sure we actually have the proper guiding light, and the proper guiding light is going to be trying to get people to do the ideal procedure. and then give them the time to do that. So the ideal procedure is to look over all the samples in photo form. This is what I do basically. That's been a very good method for me as I work through lots of samples. First is you kind of just look through pictures to go, okay, that's who I'm going to be doing. Then, this is key, I would say the very next, actually the first one and the last one are short. So after looking at the pictures, I could, within one day, go into full reading. Then after that, I really do like to give it like a week or more. I don't know what it is, but a refresh time. And then I come back and look at them after I've had a refresh period. I don't know what that is for everyone. I'm even learning for myself, and I'm a bit of an anomaly myself. So I'm trying to figure out what is an appropriate refresh time.
I just want to jump in.
Another day before you turn it in.
I think around a month sounds reasonable to me. So like either a month or maybe a little more than that, most.
Say again, please.
We didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't hear me?
No.
When you said around what, you cut out for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think a month is good. Like
Yeah.
I like a month sounds good to me, or like at least around that, maybe a little more, if you want to do a little more than that. But like,
It's about 4 weeks. So having like sometime within the first week to do that first pass, and then you can have up to like 2 weeks for refresh, and then the last week do a read, like one last pass through. I mean, you can even do 3 like within that time frame.
Yeah, because the things I want to do, I notice that there seems to be one or two things happening, and I want to eliminate this. One is that the amount of time seems so long that the initial stages are skipped, where you just get your head around the samples. Or that is done, but then between that and when you kind of come back to it again for the fine look and the final look, that period's too long and it gets cold. Like you kind of get cold through the cases. So that's what I'm trying to figure out what this is. We're kind of defining what we're trying to do here, which is sufficient time to refresh, to have like a second thoughts on the case, versus then if you don't do something with that, you kind of get cold to the case. So I think we're going to try a month. I just want to make sure that we're all kind of dialing in exactly the experiment we're trying to.
so 4
achieve.
weeks.
So 4 weeks we'll try that. So then,
Or like 5 maybe.
yeah, I wonder.
But I guess we also have to ask, is the sizing like what we want?
No, you're right. That also is definitely
So
in play.
it's a combination of the sizing with the
Yeah, this one
time,
was
right?
54.
Because I think what
right.
might even be more important than the. Can I finish what I'm gonna say?
Yeah, please. I'm sorry.
Right. What I'm thinking is something that may be even more important than the time that we take is the size right for the time we choose, because we could do a lot of different times, like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and I think a lot of them would work really well. But if the sizing isn't what we want, for that, then that could be even more important.
No, it's a very good point. I wouldn't use the term that it's more important. I think it's actually a separate part of the equation. I think they're probably equal parts. The ideal amount of time, this is key, for a push. The amount of time for a push, a case push, versus what you're talking about, what is the ideal case load, sample load of a case push? You're going to do a push, what's a good amount? I have an idea for that I think, like many things, may have already been shown about the human condition. TV shows are really great at this. They basically have done a lot of research on how many characters can an audience really care about and keep track of. And the number is usually 2 to 20. That's the range, where most of the time it's between 5 and 10. Most casts of the main characters or supporting characters that come in quite regularly, about 5 to 10 is average. You can go down to 2. You need at least 2 to make it interesting because there's more than one person going on. Thus, it's not a single case, it's a case push of at least 2 to get that show. Up to, there are some shows that have like 10 to 20. Some of your larger ensemble casts, your bigger, like your Sopranos and things of that, they have a bit more larger casts. HBO is known for having some fairly large casts where you have 10 to 20 star caliber people in there doing interesting stuff. So I think that might be what we go with. So we've been doing 5 to 10. Maybe let's try 20 this time. 20 for a month. I'll have to get the 20 samples, but we'll try that, and then I want to hear your guys' feedback very much. Again, on the time. And
that actually works really well because that's technically like the same rate as the quiz we just did, or very close to it. Because I think we did like 60 in 3 months or something.
Yeah. So this is
something like that.
And then comparing it to what we did before, it's a little slower, isn't it? In that it's that would be 20 samples over 4 weeks. Is 5 a week. We have been doing.
Yeah. So compared to like the 5 to 10 a week, it would be generally a little. It'd be on the low end essentially.
Okay.
But we could do. Do we want to? Do we want to make like some of them optional and not all of them, or do we want to do something else? Or
that's another element. I think what I'm going to do is, I don't know. I don't think I know enough of that yet. I actually want to kind of see what people do, because I've been imposing on, and this is just something that I'm trying to deal with, because I need to have this drive, but I also have to watch this drive as far as my 5th gear. I really am pushing to be able to generate a lot of POC content, right?
Yeah.
So I have to watch for that not leaking into trying to figure out what is the best way to have a Mojo reader be successful. Because whatever that is, however often, with whatever number, that's the ideal that shows us off the best. So right now, I'm thinking that perhaps I, by making mandatories, I impose that. Because actually, for example, I imposed on myself, and I pulled back from that, as I believe it to be a wise move, on my own read. I count 1,000 per volume, but I don't close out all 1,000 anymore. I close out which feels good. I leave the rest. I keep the media we have, so I can come back and look for it later. But I don't actually tell myself which one I have to close. I've learned telling myself I have to close something actually puts a lot of burden on it. So I'm thinking about, I want to pull off that, but maybe make a number. A POC number. I'm thinking a handful, or maybe 10, half, something like that. I don't know. I'll see what people do. I
like the concept of, because I know what we've been doing recently is or in the past is we've had 5 that were requisite and 5 that were optional. But what you could do is, instead of having that are either optional or requisite, they're all optional, but in order for it to be a quiz, you have to choose 5. So 20 choose 5. And it would be your choice which ones you want to do. Something like that.
I like that.
Would that be a good idea, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like the number 5 or 10 better. I'm holding off on that, and I'm going to see how people do and what they feel like doing. I want to get feedback more on how the time turnaround felt and how the volume felt, and what people are kind of just doing, and just kind of really kind of talk with you all and really develop just the best way to come at it. And then whatever ends up being that process, that's what we want to teach people. We first have kind of discovered ourselves. Myself, I base a lot of things off me, and then I have the ability to do a lot with the story in my head and my spirit connections, but still, I can't help but orient a lot off of me as far as how to come at Mojo reading. So that's why with you guys, I really want to find out what's the best for all of us. Different people, come at things differently, but a general best practices. So I appreciate you guys helping me experiment with this. So we have 3 elements. Let's see if there's any more. So there's the turnaround time, there is the volume, there is the mandatory requirements. Okay, versus optional. Is there anything else? Major components?
as far as like stuff outside of the, I mean, I guess we could talk about the review process, like what we do after a quiz. We could talk about, we talked a little bit about preparation, like collaging through the samples once. We could talk about the process itself of like what we were doing as we were reading these samples, the headspaces we were in, things like that if we want to.
And so I think we do that to some degree. We do a quiz review, and then to ever get purified, we also review there. So we could perhaps add in a more review or more of a narrative on that. I'll think on that, on when we could possibly incorporate that.
I was wondering, how did we all individually go about the quiz?
That's what we're
Was that-
doing.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
That's how we
Mitchell-
got started, and then we kind of went high level to kind of see what we're doing. Mitchell gave his points. If you go ahead now and chime in. Actually, Jarlene, do you mind going next?
Yeah, no, don't mind. So I posted some on the forums. I think that in general, on a high level, the way I approached it was to do an initial going through just the pictures of the samples, and that was, I think, about a month ago. I started doing that, and then I did that in one night where I went through all the pictures for the samples, and then I think about another week passed, and then I started looking at interview footage. And I think I did half one night,
Now, that's important
half
stuff.
in another.
Can I jump in there? This might
Yeah.
go into the volume discussion.
Mm-hmm.
You naturally broke it up, didn't you?
Yeah, because I just I got fatigued of looking at video media.
About 20 was
like about 20.
20. So
Yeah, 25. Yeah, like 25. Yeah, when I was really looking at it. Yeah, because I was looking at pictures at that point and video, and also
I think
looking
you
at.
went to 25 in order to
Wikipedia.
get like quote unquote halfway.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you would have probably preferred to call it, because I think you pushed yourself.
Yeah.
You kind of pushed to get 25.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing that much on Mojo reading isn't always advantageous for one's fifth year. You may have to do it in life, tactically, you have to do it. But if you ever don't have to, and here we're trying to go for ideal conditions. So
Right.
you would say definitely
Yeah.
under 25 then maybe,
Under 25 is comfortable
for a single push.
for single push. I found in my
That's pretty
experience.
good, yeah. I personally haven't pushed myself that hard, but I definitely feel like that might even be more effective because you can get through so much and that frees up a lot of time later to go
Yeah.
through like again, right? And I think that's really helpful. Like the amount of reps you do, like when I'm collaging, like I don't really do it one time, and then just guess my first time, you know what I mean?
Right.
I go through it multiple times, and I mean, even though you don't get you get the answers directly when you're doing collaging, and here you don't, but I still think that the multiple reps is actually really helpful.
Yeah.
Next rep was the second.
It was the second push. Yeah, and what I was doing there is at that point I was just looking at it, trying to do from blank canvas, and then if things jumped out like certain clues, I'd write them down, like kind of seeing Nijez or I'm seeing something, but I didn't force myself to narrow it down if I didn't feel like they popped out or I got any like clues that I felt strong about. I let it be, and then I came back. I think in another 5 days. Then from there I just started doing like every couple of days or every 3 days I'd look through the pictures, just so they'd stay fresh in my head, and so they could like sort of percolate. So that was a little more like passive, but like I felt that was helpful to just look at the pictures and kind of just drink it in and let my brain do what it does in the background. And then I came back, I think one more time, and that was this past week. I came one more time and looked at the two sets again, like on separate
I
days.
could ask a little follow-up question here. These last three just mentioned, where you did the second half of your soft reads, and then you did your firm reads, and then you did your finalization. How did the time feel these many months?
Well, it felt kind of, I didn't
Was there
feel
a
like
period
it got
you took a long
cold.
break?
Yeah, I took a longer break. Yeah, I think maybe I started maybe it was longer than a month because I think because when did the answers or the quiz go out?
We had what, close to 3 months?
Yeah, 3 months. So yeah,
Yeah.
I did start reading because I went in and looked at them like right away. So it was like, so yeah, it wasn't really a month. It was 3 months, and I did feel like it got a little cold as I was in between. It was starting, like it got to be a little
Okay,
much.
so did you do the, between the first push of soft reads and the second half of that, how much was, whatever you can remember is fine, how much was the break there as compared to once you did that, when you did your firm reading?
So from the soft to the,
Yeah, between soft part 1 and soft part 2, how much time period was that? And then, I think that might have been shorter.
yeah, that was about a week.
Then how much between when you did that and then you did your final reads? That a huge,
That was big. Yeah, that was a big gulf. That was like a couple months, right?
over a month at least?
Yeah.
Okay, so you definitely got to chop off, chop off some time.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben, how about you? What was your pattern?
For me, I started a little bit late, but I didn't start like super late or anything. I started.
And let's go these four concepts: canvas, soft read, firm read, finalize. When did you first canvas?
I first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't do any initial canvassing. I essentially just started looking at samples and making like after a sufficient amount of for myself, making reads.
A question. So then, am I right in saying you definitely went straight to soft reads? Did you go straight to firm reading, or did you?
I didn't really know whether they were soft reads or firm reads. Like I left them, like I was open to the concept of like going back and changing them, but I didn't really end up doing that. So I guess in a way they were soft reads, but I felt like they were. I gave enough time that they were essentially. They were essentially treated like guesses I would be making on like the 5 to 10 seconds.
So as far as I'm trying to see where you guys are on the mat, because each Mojo read is like kind of grappling with the unknown. So you skipped the canvassing and you went straight to full media reads. And then let me know if I didn't get this right. You basically were going with the idea that these could be, that this might be your firm read, unless you thought
unless
about it.
I felt that like if I felt the inclination later on to change them, then I would go back and change them.
Your intention was closing. You were reading to close.
I wasn't necessarily reading. I actually didn't have that kind of headspace. I was putting what I thought they were down on paper, but I wasn't necessitating that I would close. I didn't know if those would be my final reads, right?
Were you necessitating that they were soft then?
Yeah, they were definitely soft because I was writing down on paper what I thought their mojos were. So they were at least soft reads. I can't really explicitly say whether they were soft reads or firm reads because I was open to the idea of changing them, right? But I didn't end up doing that. So I think largely because I was doing only like 1 or 2 samples a day, like I didn't really. And because I didn't actually develop a ritual of reviewing them, I didn't actually make any changes. But if I had actually gone through a ritual of reviewing my reads, I probably would have made some changes. There's a good chance. So,
gotcha. Okay.
So I think that's an important thing is like next time I probably am going to go through it more than once. Like I went through it once is basically what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
So, and that's why they didn't change. If I had gone through another time, then that first run through where I had been putting my answers down, those probably would have behaved more like soft reads because things most likely would have changed on my second look through. So
this is great. Thank you, Ben. I'll ask some follow-up questions as well if you hear. Because like I said, we're all on the mat together. We're all kind of climbing this mountain. So I'm kind of seeing where you were. Because you want to actually have energy to do at least 2 read passes. There's a canvassing pass, then there's a soft read, and then a hard read, and then the finalizing, you kind of just go through pictures again. So it's kind of like pictures,
Of course,
video,
if you're canvassing and you feel like you've canvassed enough that you are comfortable doing a soft read, would that not warrant you to make a soft read, or is that, or do you think like the canvassing?
Right now, yeah, I'm just going to ask. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. In high level, we want to do those 4 layers. Those 4 layers are all I found to be very, very important. The canvassing to get your brain to put up the cases on the wall and just go, that's what I'm working on. For example, like, oh, we're watching this show, Jarlene. It looks like they have 11 main people. And you're like, okay, in order to get this show, I need these 11 people. It really helps to do that. And then the soft read, while understanding that I have a second time I'm going to read them. And you want to kind of make it to where there is an interest, and then critically also an energy level. You actually have enough energy. So volume, like you mentioned before, Ben, is very important. So that the amount of samples is, ooh, I think I can read through that cast kind of fast and then do like more of a savoring read of them. That tends to be the natural flow. And then finally, you know, a last check. So my question is on you is on the volume or the time, not sure. Were you preferring 5th gear that if you didn't have to do a second run? Because it looks like this quiz most likely probably was too high of a volume, too long of a period of time.
No, I think I didn't really put much foresight into going through it again. Like I didn't actually, like I thought that one run through, like that I knew I would get at least one run through.
Right.
And that was really significant. I didn't really plan for a second run through,
Okay,
but
that's important. So we do want to plan for a second run through, and so making that one is just setting your intention that way. But a lot of it also is having the right experiment. It's the right size. So we want a volume size, kind of like say you're reading a book, and you can read it once through, and then you can read it for a deeper meaning. Right, where you look more stuff up, you look out words, you may make notes in the margins, things like that. And so the book needs to be interesting enough and small enough, which is why books aren't infinitely big. Even if they are really huge, you chop them up so that people can do that. It's the appropriate size to where it's easy to review it, easy and attractive. So I think definitely it looks like maybe less samples would make it easier.
I'm not so sure the number of samples is precisely what caused that though, because as I did say, I did start later.
Okay. No, and so there's no critique on anything here. This is actually all
right. But I wanna clarify. I only did like 1 or 2 samples a day, right? And you know, for Jalene point out, I mean, you can, you know, I may be slightly different, but I can probably do like, you know, if knowing that I'm going to be doing this multiple times, I could probably go much faster if I know I'm going to go through it again. You know what I mean? And because if I taking it 1 or 2 a day, that's obviously, you know, you have a lot of energy to do that and be careful. But I think sacrificing just you know, really slow pacing for, you know, increasing the pace so you can get more run throughs in seems to be a really effective way to do it. I think that for me is something I could have done better, because like it wasn't that I didn't have enough time. It's that my pacing was so slow. I was just going at a pace that would be suitable to go through, you know, every sample once, you know, thoroughly. But that I ended up not getting the second run through.
No, that makes sense. But there's also a limitation on what we know there to this extent, which is you weren't trying to do a single push and capture the samples because we didn't have to. But we're kind of discovering now that the number that we want to shoot for is a number that it would be a bit ambitious, but doable as a single time push. So I guess most of us would sit down for what, a couple of hours to do it. So before you get fatigued. So what could be achievable realistically to do it like that? Because I think it would make it easier as far as folding the data in your head. If you don't have to split up the cast, which again is why TV shows are very well versed in this, and this is way before them. This goes all the way back to theater. In fact, really, it goes back to telling stories in books and just bardic stuff, oral tradition. You can only have so many characters people can keep track of. So we want an amount that is able that you could kind of do in one sitting.
You want to maybe hear Glenn's
Yes,
perspective?
definitely. But I don't want to, if Ben had more to say there.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, to me, the total number isn't super important, because if it is a larger number, if it can be done in one sitting alone, 2 sittings, I think, is fairly suitable. If you just do it one day, then the next day it's
I do have to say, just to make this clear here, it does matter as far as the ideal process, because as far as being able to turn over the cast of characters in a single push, I don't think that number is infinite. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it can be any number. I think
but I think if you can't do that, you could break it up into parts. I'm not sure if that would be ideal, but
that's exactly
it wouldn't necessarily be like a huge.
I do believe. No, I see what you're saying. It's what you're doing is doable in a viable way in certain circumstances. But as far as an ideal, I do think an ideal is to pick a mount for a quiz that maybe is more similar to the cast of a show, so that it can be done in a single session push, and then layers of sessions where each session you can go through most or all of them.
Right. I mean, that would make it an easier increment, but you could divide them and it still works out. It won't be. It may not be as totally effective, but I think that.
Well, going kind of the theory of steel, which I often use as a metaphor for like the truth beacon, the lens, is you do need to start with a single ore. Do you mean in order to start folding it, you don't actually usually take a samurai sword, for example, and actually make 2 half sets of ore and then fold them each a bunch of times and then at some point blend them together. You usually take the size that will capture the instrument, no more, and then you fold that single starter. So I'm trying to figure out what is as far as our proof of concept, what is the best size in order to.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take it as like one whole, it does help for me to conceptualize the whole quiz at once, which a 20 samples is a more manageable number than 50. That's definitely true.
Yeah. And I think that ability that you brought there too, Ben, thank you. One is, like I mentioned, the being able to kind of flip it as a whole thing, but like you said, also hold it, kind of constellate in your head, like, oh, CSI Miami, and like you can kind of bring up, you watch the show a lot, you can bring up the whole cast in your head. But yeah, it can't be too big where you can't do that.
Right, and flipping the process of that, if it can be done in one day, right, then the process of doing a second flip would be, day 2 would be the second flip, day 3 would be the third flip that you would actually.
Right, you could also take breaks in between, to refresh and then come back and flip it again. But yeah, each time you kind of came back, you could.
Yeah, so it allows for days in between where you're not flipping.
Yeah,
which is good because necessarily, like if you do it one after another, like oftentimes it's the distance between the days that makes it a different experience. Because if you do it one after another, if the next day is probably going to be similar to the previous day, or more so than if you had waited for 4 days.
But you're right, your lens doesn't really improve until you pause to refresh. Then all the work and experience you did, internalizes and you level up.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay. Glenn, please, your thoughts. How did the rollout for you happen?
For me, I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think I started reading because 50 samples, just in initial canvassing, I kind of held off on doing that because it seemed to me like, okay, if I'm going to start doing Mojo reading, then I'm going to have to like at least get a certain amount of energy built up in order to even begin. Because canvassing, going through 50 samples is 50 of anything, right? It's quite a bit of stuff. Even if you're just going to be looking at it individually. And if you have to look up the person and get the picture and get the video and go through all the clicking and all that sort of stuff, that kind of is a little bit of work that you need to do. This is why I kind of liked the 10 samples 1 week kind of thing that we had going on before, because everyone was asked to basically put up 2 pictures of the sample and 2 videos. And I like that because I can just be like, okay, let me go through all 10 of these samples just to get that initial canvassing so that I have at least them inside my head. But this time I kind of felt like, like it's going to be quite a bit of work. I'm going to have to do a lot of stuff in order to get all 50 of them And I held off on doing that, I think, for like maybe the first 2-3 weeks or so. But then I started noticing that Janine was doing a lot of stuff online, and then that kind of made me feel like, I think I should probably get in and start doing these, right? Like it kind of made me, I started feeling like pressure to like, like I don't want to be left behind. Not to say that that's a bad thing or anything or a good thing. It's just that's what I was feeling. And then that kind of spurred me to want to start doing something a little bit. And then I went through about like a week or so, maybe 2 weeks, I don't remember exactly. And then I went through about half of the samples, or maybe 30 samples. 20, 30 samples, I did like half of it. Went through all of them kind of, and didn't go as deep as I normally do on like 10 samples. I go really, really deep. I kind of went like to a certain point, maybe like 85% of the way, I think, or maybe about 90% of the way. And then I kind of like stopped, and then after I did those first 20 and 30, I kind of just dropped it for a little while, and then I started focusing on other things that was going on in my life, like school and all that sort of stuff. And then just recently, I really felt the pressure to want to start focusing on my Mojoing again to get the last few, or the last 20 or 30, and then I kind of like pushed really hard up until the very last moment. Even right before I posted the quiz to you guys, I was working on it. Trying to get each and every single one. And I noticed that each time that I was spending on each of the samples became less and less and less and less and less, until the very last sample I hardly even looked at. I just kind of looked at pictures. And that was quite a bit of them too. Like I think the last 10 or 5 of them, I was just looking at pictures to try and get an idea. Some of them are more interesting than others. So then I started looking at videos, and that kind of made me feel like, and then I had to like, get myself oriented again, be like, oh no, I have to finish. And so that was kind of my experience. So I don't know, like 3 months, it seems like a really long time, and 50 samples seems like a lot of stuff that you need to take in. If we're talking about initial canvassing, I think I would advocate the idea that if we're going to do 50 samples or however many samples, I like having it all, like available to me so that I can just look through all 50 of the samples or all 20 of the samples or however many there are, and just be able to like very easily just be like, okay, that's this person, and I can watch a little bit of video, that's this person, instead of actually having to go through the entire process of researching them on my own. So I don't know, that's kind of like how, what I was thinking about as far as like ideas. I don't know if that's just my idea, like perspective, I guess.
That's good, thank you. Yeah. Some other things there. One company's kind of flushed out is that we're actually playing around with another variable, which is the amount of time between quizzes. So it might be that even the 5 to 10 we were doing, maybe that was a good number. We can try 20 and see how that goes. So there's the amount of time between when you're given the samples to when you have to give your answers, but there's also the amount of time between when you have to do that process again. So maybe another thing we'll play around with also is just how frequently we have them. So maybe a week is a good turnaround time. Maybe it's a month. Maybe it's 3 weeks. We'll find out what a good time is. But then also finding out kind of a larger scale of that is how much time between 2 quizzes gives a good refresh of your lens, reestablishes your so you internalize things, better 5th gear, and your appetite comes back, and you are learning more about collaging and other things, libraries, stuff of that nature. We'll do other things on the sessions. So you've had a lot more training since the last time we had a quiz. How much of that is good? Before, we mentioned this before, right? You start feeling I'm getting rusty. Like it's been a little too long since I've done quizzing. I've kind of gotten a little out of this practice. So we want to kind of find what's a good amount, kind of like, tournaments. We talked this before, back to different competitions. There's a certain amount of tournaments that keeps you ideally geared up. You can perform well, then you learn from what happened, you train on it, and then you anticipate the next chance to show off. You perform, you recover, you internalize, you look forward to the next show off. And so there's a certain time of year. Tournaments tend to actually go often like from once a month up to like once a year. That's the range tournaments tend to actually revolve in. So trying to find the ideal amount. When you go beneath a month, they tend to call them quizzes. I don't know if that means anything. There is, I'm sure, well, it does. We'll talk difference between quizzes and tests. We brought up last time that can be talked about a lot, and I think we might even be touching on that a bit. So I'm thinking, I guess this is before we move on, the next question. Next quiz is going to be 1 month, 20 samples, and then do as many as you want, and we'll see what people feel like doing. Next question is, when should we have it? I'm thinking I'll do it sometime within the next 3 months. We'll try that interval. And when we do it, once I post it, you have a month to do it. But I think let's give a few months. And as this happens, I want you guys to talk to me. After a few weeks, a few months, or whatever, if you start feeling, I'm feeling an itch to do a quiz, I'd like to know that. I'd like to know how quickly does the itch return. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's also a good idea sometimes too, Coach. We can have Mojo reads that we do that are kind of just, they're like mini quizzes, you know, like I like the idea of being like spur of the moment kind of thing where we're asked to read a sample or 2 samples just randomly throughout just in order to keep our energies up and keep ourselves fresh on it. So it doesn't necessarily have to always be sort of like this ritual where we're always doing, you know, a certain amount of samples and a certain amount of time frame and such and such.
No, Glenn, it's a very good point.
I like that thinking.
Yeah, that's great.
Casual, you know what I mean? Like making it sort of,
it's like if you have tournaments, between the tournaments, you actually are doing things with your training partners. And you're always doing like, oh, today we're going to work a little bit on this, and tomorrow we'll work a little bit on that, and then okay, let's take a couple days off, and the next year, again, let's jump it. And so you're right. So it's a combination of those.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like
like where we go maybe a little more in depth on certain.
it's effective as far as interest is concerned. I think for there to be variables that aren't as routine, that are more like unexpected, because
makes it more into a fun game, right?
yeah,
Like,
it feels
do you-
more like a game essentially.
Do you
Because
remember
it's
those times? Like, I just want to jump in real quick, Ben. Do you remember
Go
those
ahead.
times when we call it Coach kind of had like a hangout with us, and then he kind of mentioned, "Oh, I'm looking at these samples of this TV show," and then we were asked to read like a few here or there, or then those Nijai that are part of the, I don't know, bubble, like a certain group of. That was kind of like an interesting thing, right? Like, I kind of like that, and then kind of doing that every now and then.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
I
that
think,
seems like.
well, once I get further along on the Rosetta Stone, and you guys are all L10s, we're working on post L10 stuff. One of the things I'll be doing is a periodic vlog where I talk about current events and things like that. And as a part of that, I'll need to be continually dropping new samples as new stories show up in the news. And so I might start working in where like every now and then I'll just throw a, 1 or 2 out and say I'll reveal the answer next week. Or this gets all these things you talk to about the that return on interest. This is really good to talk about too. Is it a week? Is it 48 hours? Is it different for when you do a full cast of 10 to 20 people versus 1 to 2? So I do want to play around with that also. Yeah. I might actually word it to where maybe when a certain number of people give their answer, then I'll reveal it. And then maybe that will say, how long it takes for the interest to build up. Because it might be that actually everyone turns their answer in and is really interested in, maybe it's like 48 hours. Or maybe it takes a week before, the community kind of goes, oh, I think this. And I talked to Sam and he told me about that we're doing that thing. And I think it might be that, the kind of word of mouth in the community to like make motion. Definitely. Okay, this is really good.
And I think, Glenn, the ones that you were talking to, was it like on the spot also? Guessing on the spot?
Kind of. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sample.
No, I think what he's talking about, am I mistaken, Glenn? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
On the spot. What I'm talking about kind of is just like a sample can either be read or not or unread at that point, but it's kind of brought into the discussion in the Hangout, or maybe even just on the site, on the forum. Like, oh, this person seems interesting. Like, I remember, I liked I don't know if you remember this, Jailene, but there was a little child, right? And then he was brought up as a read or something. And then I kind of looked at him, and he was a Z9, right? I think he was on the Ellen show. And I was like, I think he's a Z9. And then you came in, you thought that he was a Z9 too. And then that was like a little heightened moment. I like that. I don't know what happened exactly there, but that was kind of cool. It kind of like fired up my interest. One, like figure out who this person was, and then I read him, and then I think it was a kind of feeling of like, I wonder who can figure out this person's mojo first. You know, out of everyone that's knows about this sample, you know, like I'm gonna, you know, figure this person out, and then I'm gonna be like, okay, submit the answer, kind of thing. Sort of reminds, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know, like I'm just kind of trying to think of ideas, like what could be interesting.
Yeah.
No, that actually makes it interesting to me as well.
Mitchell has something to say, by the way. Just, but you can. Yeah.
Mitchell had something.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I just had a question. Did you say we were going to reveal the answers this hangout?
Yes, that's why we're going to move on here in a moment.
I was about to say, 'cause we're running.
Yeah.
I realize it's a great
Let's get
conversation.
the answers.
I don't want to curve it too much. Although I'm trying to jump in there at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, but anything else before we move on?
No, I'm good.
Cool. So I'll just say for my part at the end there that it was motivating for me as well. And I basically went with a protocol because I was busy, is that if it's interesting to the community, then I'll do it. And so I would set a number, you know, of like if 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, I set like a little number in my head. If that many people like actually give an answer and say what they think, I'm like, then I'll go and do it. So that could be just a really good way to motivate the community in general. So
yeah, especially in moments where you feel as though, you know, like it's getting a little bit cold now. Like we haven't done Mojo reading in a while, and you want to like get the energy kind of going again. I think throwing like one sample, just one sample, it could be really fun like that. It could be really interesting. Like, oh, this is an interesting sample. I may or may not know the answer, but I just thought I'd throw this out to the community and see what they think. You know, guys, yeah. I think that's a good kind of strategy in order to keep us from getting too sleepy on Mojo.
It feels like a semi-live read almost. I mean, it's not live, but it's like just it's spur of the moment. You know, it's kind of.
It also is a different proof of concept too, because besides being longer and more samples in the official quiz, you also don't get to see other people's answers before they're all revealed. With this, actually, it's a pro and a con. You get to hear other people's answers, but if they disagree with yours, you have to kind of deal with the fact that you know ahead of time that some other people in the tribe don't agree with your answer. So that's another kind of test.
Yeah.
Is there anything before we move on? Anything else, anyone?
I think that's good for now, I think, yeah.
Good, Ben? Mitchell?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's do it. All right, so let's get the answer then. Excellent discussion. We needed that. All right, let's do it. Actually, maybe I'll put it here because I'm going to work off of my collage.